Hello, this is Brian from Task. The name of this web-based tutorial is an overview of the Workscope development process. This tutorial is geared towards SONYC level providers, but all COMPASS programs follow the same general flow. The goal of this tutorial is to familiarize DYCD Online users on the Workscope development process within the database. I'll break down the Workscope section by section, providing how-to instruction for inputting information and share best practices for quality Workscope development. The Workscope serves as the blueprint for next fiscal year's programming and operations. A high-quality Workscope is created through intentional design and forward planning. The Workscope is a primary responsibility of the on-site program director to create within the DYCD Online database. Once complete, the Workscope is submitted to the program's DYCD Program Manager for review. The Program Manager will either approve or reject the Workscope. If the Workscope is rejected, written feedback will be provided for revisions. Once your Workscope is approved, it becomes your program plan for the next fiscal year. Additionally, upon approval, the schedule and holidays developed in the Workscope are automatically transferred to the Live site under the Main Activities tab. These activities can now be used to create rosters and start taking attendance once your next program period starts up. Timely completion of the Workscope is a key performance indicator for DYCD. After a Workscope is approved, it cannot be modified any further. This does not mean that your program is locked into your original plan. DYCD understands that changes occur as the next fiscal year progresses, and as such, changes can be made in the Live site. As a reminder, please have all changes reviewed and approved by your DYCD Program Manager. This tutorial will go over key information about the 7 sections of the Workscope. Let's start by taking a look at the Workscope section in DYCD Online. The Workscope comprises a unique portion of the DYCD Online database. To access the Workscope section, bring your cursor over the Program tab and click on the link titled Workscope. You'll be brought to a page that contains Workscopes for every contract associated with your DYCD Online account. Every contract has a unique Workscope. If you work on one contract, you'll want to select that one program. If you work or oversee multiple contracts, then specify which Workscope you'd like to access. After clicking on the appropriate Workscope, you'll notice a series of tabs. Within these tabs is where information will be entered. To best illustrate the process of inputting information into the Workscope, please click on the Approval tab. The Approval tab is important for 2 reasons. First, it's where to go to submit a completed Workscope. However, prior to being allowed to submit a Workscope, certain requirements need to be fulfilled. These requirements are called internal controls. The purpose of internal controls is to warn DYCD Online users that key elements of the Workscope have not been completed. The specific requirements are listed in the Approval tab's What's Missing section. As each provision is met, they will disappear from the section until there are no more remaining. At this point, a Submit button will appear, which signals that all sections are complete. I'm going to go over how to input information for each section along with an overview of the internal controls specific for each. Please note that this tutorial's aim is to increase familiarity and comfort with the technical elements of using the DYCD Online Workscope section. Please direct contractual, programmatic, and policy questions to your DYCD Program Manager. Let's dive deeper into each section. The default tab is General Info, which lists basic programmatic information. I want to highlight the bottom portion of the page titled Contract Periods/Enrollment. This section gives you information on your program periods for the next fiscal year and the total number of slots under General Enrollment. Let's move on to the Contact section. Inputting accurate contacts is essential to ensuring that your program's key staff members are receiving email correspondence from DYCD. The internal control for contacts requires a contact to be created for the program's on-site director and multi-site director. You may add a new contact by clicking on the Add New tab and filling in the information. Make sure to click off the appropriate radial dial or circle next to the title of the individual and provide an up-to-date email for each person entered as a contact. The next part of the workscope is called the Design section. This is the part of the workscope providing space for the written narrative to be added to the workscope for your DYCD program manager to understand your program's design, goals, and methodology. Use the Edit button within each section to start answering each question by entering or modifying text. There is an import option for adding information from last year. You may use this option if you are an existing program, but please make sure to review the information to make sure it's still applicable for the next fiscal year. Every section needs to be completed in order to meet DYCD Online's internal controls for the Design section. If a portion does not pertain to your program, Enter NA are not applicable. Also, please don't forget to make a selection for the primary and secondary approach categories at the very top of the page. The third section is the staffing plan. A successful staffing plan meets two key requirements to ensure the positive development of participants in your program. First, the staffing plan meets the DYCD and Department of Health participant to staff ratio requirements. And second, the staffing plan in DYCD Online matches your program's budget. Collaboration between your program leadership, fiscal team, and DYCD program manager is essential to developing a staffing plan that meets these objectives. DYCD Online's internal control prevents programs from submitting a work scope without a staffing plan, which specific elements will be reviewed by your DYCD program manager. The staffing plan may be developed from scratch or imported from last year. If importing from last year, please make sure to make all changes for the next fiscal year if necessary. The fourth section is dedicated to the schedule. This section is the foundation of the DYCD Online house. The planning for the schedule section is critical to ensure the next fiscal year's programming is developmentally appropriate and meets DYCD contractual requirements. DYCD sets target hours for your program and for specific program elements such as leadership for SONYC programs. DYCD Online calculates how many hours each activity that you create will offer participants over the course of the program period. This projected number of hours is added to the program's overall total and to the primary category that was selected by you. Once a program's activities surpass the DYCD hour benchmark, the internal control will be met. For demonstration purposes, I'm adding a brand new leadership activity that runs from 4 to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. First, I fill out the activity info, paying close attention to choose the correct primary category. Let's take a moment to pause to look at the structured versus unstructured chart. For SONYC programs, you will need to decide whether the activity that you're creating is structured or unstructured. Please keep in mind that only structured activities count towards your program's ROP calculation. Next, in the Scheduling tab, I'm selecting my schedule and now clicking on Save. After I click on Exit to Workscope, I see my activity in the list. Let's see how many hours this activity contributed to my programmatic totals. I click on the Approval tab and see that this activity has contributed 2,520 hours to 3-hour goals. School year scheduled hours in structured activities, and scheduled hours in leadership development. If you're like me, you're wondering how DYCD sets target hours and calculates projections for your activities. First, DYCD sets targets for the following 5 categories: school year, summer, structured hours, enrichment, and leadership development. These numbers represent the minimum hours that will need to be scheduled for the next fiscal year. For target hours, DYCD multiplies the benchmark for the category by the total number of funded slots allocated to your program. Each activity entered into the Workscope schedule will run a projected number of hours. Let's use the leadership activity I just created as an example for how DYCD calculates their projection. First, every activity contributes to total hours. Next, the selections for is this activity structured and primary category determine what categories the activity's hours will count towards. In this instance, the activity is structured and has a primary category selection of leadership development. Lastly, max attendance determines how many participants are expected to attend. Based on the info that you provide when scheduling an activity, DYCD Online does some math. The activity will run 88 times over the course of the year for 1 hour each for a total of 20 participants. 88 times 1 times 20 equals 1,760 hours. These hours count towards your program's total hour goal, structured hour goal, and leadership development goal. Let's change gears to start discussing how activities can be made within the system. If you are with a brand new program, the only option is to create a new schedule from scratch using the Add New tab and then manually entering each activity as shown in the previous example. If you are an existing program, importing existing activities is an option. The process for importing activities is as follows. Click on the Import Activity to access the list of all the activities from last year's Workscope. You are given the option to import just the activity info or include its schedule. If the activity will run on the same days and times as last year, then importing the activity and the schedule is a good option. If the activity remains the same, but the dates and times will change, I advise importing just the activity and then developing the new correct schedule using the Schedule tab of the activity to avoid unnecessary confusion. Let's move on to the Holidays section. This section provides a list of all days that the DOE will be closed for holidays or recesses. If your program plans to be open for any of these days, you'll want to notify DYCD by declaring such days as open holidays. If your contract includes a holiday component, the DYCD Online internal control will be met after the appropriate number of holidays have been declared. The process for adding holidays is as follows. Click on the Add New Holiday tab and select the holiday from the list. All the info for the holiday will be auto-populated. Next, you'll want to select if you will be open for that day. After clicking Save, the holiday will be added to your list as an open holiday. Please note, if your program is planning on being open on a holiday, a schedule for the activities occurring on that day should be created within the Schedule tab of the Workscope. After all elements of the Workscope are completed, all the lines of what's missing under the Approval tab will disappear and the Submit button will appear. This means you have developed a complete Workscope. The Submit button appearing does not guarantee that the Workscope is accurate or appropriate for your participants. DYCD strongly recommends running reports to review your Workscope prior to submitting. There are 2 reports that I want to highlight. Both reports are located under the Reports tab within the Workscope. The first report is the Workscope Activity Report, which summarizes core information for each activity: the primary category, the schedule, and the projected hours. At the very bottom of this report is a key that summarizes hourly totals. This section is a good place to look to ensure that you are creating a schedule with the appropriate amount of programming for each category. The second report is the Activity Schedule Grid, also located within the Reports tab of your Workscope. The Activity Schedule Grid is your program scheduled as it appears in your Workscope. I recommend running the Activity Schedule Grid for each grade for a typical 5-day week in your program. Use the Activity Schedule Grid to spot gaps or times where there is no programming for your participants, or overlaps where students are unintentionally scheduled for 2 activities occurring at some or all of the same time. After satisfying all DYCD internal controls and reviewing reports, please proceed to the Approval tab and click Submit. Clicking Submit will change your Workscope status from Not Submitted to Submitted and notify your DYCD Program Manager that your Workscope is ready for their review. Once a Workscope is approved, all the activities in the Schedule section will be transferred to the Main Activities tab within the live site. To recap, this Workscope web tutorial provides a section-by-section overview of the Workscope development process in DYCD Online. This concludes my tutorial on the Workscope development process. Thank you for watching my video.